And I'll also have some time at the end for questions and answers. So if you want to add questions into the chat box while we're talking, I'll be able to look at those at the end and answer any of those. If there's anything that Sarah can answer during the webinar, then she'll be answering those. Otherwise, I'll get to them at the end. Okay, so let's get started. What we're talking about today is around students' home uses of technology, and as we know, it's never been more important than ever. I'm going to share the screen and put on the PowerPoint. So give me one moment, please. Okay, so when we're thinking about children's home technology use, as I said, it's never been more important than ever. And we do have a focus on at the moment. And there's a couple of things that we think about when we think about students or children using technology. There are two things that are really standing out for us at the moment. On the one end, Sarah, are you able to let people in from the meeting room? So let me just double check on this. Sorry, everyone. Oh, okay, okay. All right, so there are two things that we think of. One, going all over the place now. Let me just get back to where I was. One moment. Okay, now we're good. Sorry, everyone, just be a moment. Okay. All right, so there are two things that really stand out for us at the moment in terms of our students' home technology use. One is around what I call the illegal activity, and that's the focus on e-safety. So things like cyberbullying, pedophiles and criminals contacting students, you know, when their social uses, sharing of personal or private information, and the illegal connotations that come from that. So we have a big focus on that. And at the other end, of course, we have a big focus on the ways that technology can enhance learning. And that's where you guys come in a lot in terms of school uses of technology, in particular, you know, in recent months, the ways we can use the online learning space to enhance student learning across the curriculum. So those two facets have been the focus for a number of years now in terms of home technology use. But what I'm going to talk about today is not those two facets. It's one facet that seems to be going under the radar. And surprisingly, it's going under the radar because it actually impacts both those ends. What I'm going to be talking about today is this line. It's everything that's in between. So it's not the illegal activity, it's not the e-safety element of students' home technology use, and it's not their uses of technology for school. It's the lifestyle aspect of their home technology use. And by that I mean it's just youth internet culture or youth digital culture. It's the ways that they hang out with their friends online. It's the interests that they develop. It's you know, the massive use of TikTok. It's the ways they organise technology in their life, the kinds of routines and habits that they've developed. It's that everything in between. And why I'm focusing on that is for a few reasons. One is that about 90% of your students' home technology use focuses on that part. You know, it's that out of school technology use. So about 10% is in school and around 90% of their use is outside of school. So in the bus, at home, when they're at cafes, when they're at friends' places, when they're waiting in line for coffee, when they're at the footy oval, all those times. And from it, they develop a number of routines, habits, interests, skills, and then that impacts the ways that they understand technology in their life, the kinds of worldview they have, the goals that they develop, what they understand to be healthy use, unhealthy use. And that part has a really big impact on schools, because when their lifestyle aspect isn't managed well, it's the schools who need to step in and to help to manage that. The students haven't been able to do it themselves, or the parents haven't been able to do it themselves. So in this slide is just a little bit of an idea of what some of those lifestyle elements are. So I don't know if you know the latest TikTok challenge. It's around Taylor Swift's song Love Story. So I'll just show you. Okay, billions of views for that TikTok challenge, and it's doing a particular dance, and then there's different versions of it. And then if you look to the top here, this one, another thing on TikTok, around 50% of Australian children and teenagers use TikTok every single day, and that's gone from almost zero around 18 months ago to now. So it's something that's a big part of our students' lives now. And this one here is not a challenge, but it's a typical kind of way that TikTok is shaping up, where it's, you know, this girl's got a pair of jeans on, she's an influencer, and it's a Walmart jeans promotion, but it's very much threaded through very subtly in many, you know, hundreds or thousands of TikToks where they do, you know, they make different versions of the jeans. And then down the bottom here, you can see, if you read through it, it's typical kind of language that a student in, say, year 8, year 7, year 8, maybe year 9 would use. Typical kind of messaging language. And if you're not familiar with it, you know, it takes a little while to work it out. But what this person is saying, he's saying, no, my mum keeps taking my phone off me because she's grabbing it. Girl, does she still follow you on IG, Instagram? The girl's going, yeah, but I don't post on my main. I mostly post stuff on my private Instagram. Friend, what you do this time? Girl, nothing. She has no clue. She doesn't know how I use her phone. So a couple of years ago, I do a lot of research with young people. I interview them a lot. I spend a lot of time hanging out with them, understanding the youth digital culture in a lot of depth. And a couple of years ago, one of the things that emerged from my research was that young people don't have just one Instagram account. They normally have 2 or 3 or 4 Instagram accounts. So they've got the one that the world sees, you know, the one with the edited shots and the beautiful shots, and that's normally a public account. And then they also have these other ones which are called, you know, their private account. They call them different kinds of names. And that's a closed account just for their friends. That's where they post kind of the real version of themselves, the more intimate kinds of shots. Now, if we talked about that with parents, because there's such an emphasis on e-safety, you know, a lot of us think, well, they're doing something wrong. They're doing something to hide it from us. But no, you know, from my research and the many hundreds of discussions I've had with teenagers, it's their way of understanding the internet and how to play the game to their advantage. So they know employers are going to be looking them up in the future. They understand the implications of having this public persona online. And this is their way of strategizing so that they can still use the internet in the ways that they want, but doing it in their kind of way and doing it using these kinds of strategies. So what I'm increasingly finding out is that the ways youth use the internet and their digital life is quite different to the ways that adults use it. Even the difference between a way a 13-year-old would use technology and the way, say, a 19 or 20-year-old. You know, a generation in terms of technology is very small. It's around a couple of years. And this space keeps changing. So one of our issues, or one of the things that we need to keep at front of mind, is that our students are growing up in a digital era. So being able to, one, manage the challenges and the safety issues that come along with that is really important. Two, being able to use it to learn and to leverage their skills and to enhance their knowledge is also really important. But also equally important, and I think, you know, even more so important, is being able to effectively manage these lifestyle issues. So they're not illegal, you know, they're not about school, they're just everyday uses of technology. And when these aren't managed well, it's the schools who then have to step in and manage it for them. So let me just explain that a bit better. So it's this line that I see is causing problems, and this line just not really focusing on much for a number of reasons. So if we look to the left in the white box, there's a few things that are happening with young people's technology use. And these are, you know, after many years of research in the field, these are the things that are really standing out to me as key factors in understanding young people's digital lives and in managing young people's digital lives. So the first one is that the majority of their technology habits, they've just unthinkingly picked up. The same can be said for adults, but we're focusing here on younger people. So when I'm talking about younger people, I'm definitely talking about teenagers, but also those last couple of years of primary school as well, where students can get quite independent in their use. And the average age for getting, you know, your first smartphone is around 10. So it's around that kind of time that this is happening. So what's happening is a new app will come on board, a new thing, you know, that you can do online will come up. And because their friends might be using it, or they've heard about it, or they've seen an ad pop up, young people just very quickly start taking on new ways of using technology, often without even thinking. And that's exacerbated by the fast pace of innovation on technology. So there's always new apps, there's always new things to do on social media. You know, the platforms keep changing. They're in this, the only thing we can count on is that they do keep changing. So there's this massive fast pace. Young people are taking on more and more and more ways of using technology. So there's this constantly evolving space. And then when it comes to technology, it's quite an intimate act. So it can be you and your phone, you and your iPad, you and your screen, but often it's just you and the screen. There's often not a whole lot of people looking out. It's quite an intimate relationship. So these massively quickly changing habits that young people don't give much thought to are done very much kind of privately. They might talk about it with their friends, they may talk about it with a teacher or one of their parents, but mostly it's just something that they do themselves. It's not a public act. It's not like riding a bike. It's very different. It's a very intimate act. And because of that, what they do on there and the reasons that they're doing it on there often get unnoticed or are often not understood by adults around them. So that might be their parents or their teachers. And this is causing quite a big issue in homes. So this is home use, but not all of it's taking place in homes because of mobile devices. So it's taking place everywhere. And then it comes to parents. So I spent a lot of time interviewing parents, a real lot. So I actually started off my research life working with schools and working with teachers and developing creative, engaging uses of technology. But what I found the big barrier was around students' home technology use. That's what I saw was the bigger issue. So a few years ago, I shifted my research focus. So when I go into homes now, I spend a lot of time talking to parents in all different kinds of families, all different kinds of homes. And it's very rare that I would go into a family where the parents knew what their child was doing online and that they felt comfortable with it and that they knew how to guide it. Most parents feel really unsure about this whole area of parenting. So around 80% of parents don't know what their child does on technology. And that's because of this fast pace, kind of intimate, forever changing uses of technology, because parents can't see it. And it's become a bit of a them versus us scenario in society. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So overall, parents feel quite overwhelmed by this. And if anyone's parents here, or if you're talking to parents regularly, I'm sure you've come across this regularly. They feel very lacking in confidence around how to actually guide their children's technology use, a bit scared of it, and feel quite disempowered because of that. And because there's such a massive emphasis on the safety element of technology, that this kind of exacerbates their disempowerment and their lack of confidence. Now, I'm not saying forget about safety, I'm not saying that at all, but there is an overwhelming focus on safety in terms of the kinds of messages they get from schools, in terms of the media. Now, I work in the media. Media loves safety because it gets that, it gets the click rate going, and because it really, gets to the really sensitive points for parents. And there's also no focused support. So there's support in how to, guide children's safety, how to make sure that, they're using social media safely. There's a lot of support around the safety elements. And from school, there's support around the ways to use technology to enhance learning. But there's very little support around how do you just help children with these everyday lifestyle aspects. So we do see a lot of information around screen time, but it's not just about how much time students are on technology. It's about what they're doing, how they're thinking about it, how it's affecting them, how it's leading to new routines or new habits they're developing, how they're understanding their world. And I'll give you an example of this. I'll give you a couple of examples. I was interviewing a 15-year-old boy a little while ago, and he was sitting on his back doorstep, and he was waiting for me to come and interview him. And while he was waiting, he was watching YouTube. And what he was watching was a video of a road rage incident. So it was a guy who was, having an altercation with another driver, and it was leading to, a physical fight. And I said to the boy, have you seen this kind of thing before? He said, oh, yeah, I see it all the time. It's, there's heaps of videos online. There's a lot of videos of road rage online. And I'm going, is it a setup, or is it, is it for real? He's going, no, it's for real. To me, it was very clearly a setup, to get a lot of YouTube views. But the boy wasn't seeing that. So if you think of what videos are coming up next, similar kinds of videos are coming up next. Now, his parents didn't know he was watching these kinds of videos. He'd actually been watching quite a bit of this kind of content. Now, it's not necessarily a safety issue here. He's not doing anything illegal. So these videos are up, and other kinds of videos that as parents we would think, or as teachers we would think, oh, that's just not on. This is the kind of content that this boy was watching. So if we had to think of this boy and this one element of his digital lifestyle, how is it affecting his understanding of driving, his understanding of how to deal with conflict? How is it developing his understanding of what he should do, how he should act when he's on the road, when he's not on the road? You know, all these videos that he was showing me were all of men fighting. So what are the kind of gender issues that are coming in there? What's he actually thinking just from these kinds of videos? And this is what I mean by these lifestyle aspects. So much of students' lifestyle aspects are quite hidden from the school and from parents. So they're not getting the kinds of guidance from us that they would in other elements of their life. And that's a big issue because it's leading to their overall home technology use not being managed well by them or by their parents. So they're teenagers or they're young people and they're not getting that kind of guidance and opportunity to talk about these aspects of their life like they do with other aspects of their life, because it's hidden, because it's fast moving, because of the act of using a screen, that intimate act, and because this disconnect has emerged. You know, we've got parents very worried about their children's online use, and often the only way they're really managing that is by using the phone as a form of punishment for their children's behaviour. You know, you didn't do your homework, you didn't pass that exam, I'll take your phone off you. But when I talk to the young people about this kind of issue, you know, they just say, well, you know, I just don't tell my parents anything. So it's leading to this greater division because parents are just not sure what's happening and they're not sure how to guide it. And their confidence is low. And it's this catch-22 situation. So the students, their children are missing out on this kind of guidance. And then the students, because the internet is so fast-paced in its innovation, they're not stopping to think about kinds of technology practices that they've picked up, the habits that they've picked up, how it might be affecting them. So it's this massive issue of lack of reflection and lack of know-how and lack of strategies, and it's really affecting homes. So what happens is it has this direct impact on schools. So when things get escalated to a situation where the student hasn't been able to handle it or the parent hasn't been able to handle it, then schools need to step in and address it. So I'm sure it's happening to many of you as a teacher or to your staff or, you know, to your year level group. It's just, teachers tell me it just is eating into their work. As one deputy was telling me a little while ago, she said, you know, a few years ago, you know, any kind of behaviour issues, we saw them in the playground or, you know, on the school grounds, and we were able to deal with them. But she said now so many issues come from not in school time, but are directly related to the students' technology use. And then it comes into the school sphere and they have to deal with it. So this is a major, those two first points there is just a major issue that's come onto the school scene. So years ago, it was fine to focus just on the safety, and it was fine to focus just on the enhancing learning using technology. But in the last 5 years, home technology use has changed so much, and the ways students use it has become much more complex. So a few years ago, you know, their online life could be separated from their real life. But now it's just not the case. It's not separate. You know, their online life is their real life. What they do on TikTok is real life. It's not completely separate. So this lifestyle part here, there's a two-pronged approach to getting this under control. And I'll just stop sharing for a moment. There's a two-pronged approach to getting this under control. So it deals with students' home use of technology. So part of it is helping the parents to be more confident, to be more informed. We want them to understand the kind of digital life that their children are having without taking it from a fear factor, but taking it from an understanding factor. So they get what's happening. It's not necessarily all scary. This is, you know, youth life now. So understanding what's happening, understanding the key points that are emerging and you know, are things that are really important for their children, and things that the aspects of their children's home technology life that actually need guidance. So the areas that they need the parent to help them, they need the parent to talk to about it. And then the other aspect of it is around students taking the time to think about their technology practices that have, you know, as I said, they've unthinkingly taken on board. So we know, particularly when it comes to teenagers, we can tell them lots of things. They're not necessarily going to listen to all of it. And because of that intimacy of the ways we use technology, the reflection needs to come from ourselves as well. So for the young people, they need the time and the opportunity and the guidance to be able to actually think of, well, you know, this is my digital life now. These are the things I do all the time. You know, I'm not sure why I do them, but I do this range of things. And if I think about it, some of them are actually stressing me out. I've never really thought about it too much, but some of them are causing me stress, or some of them are causing people I know stress. So taking the time to think about their technology practices and to put it into some perspective. So what I've done is I've taken all my research from the last few years and I've put it into 2 courses for schools. So I'm just going to share those and give you a little bit of a rundown of what they are, because they directly address this lifestyle aspect and help schools to help the students and help the parents to manage this much more effectively, so that schools can spend less time putting out these fires that are coming from this home technology use, and more time into, you know, what schools are there, you know, what the other elements of school life. So let me just share this screen again and I'll pull up these. There it is. Okay. So the courses are called TechClever, and they're directly for schools. So there's one course for parents and one course for students. And if I just scroll down a little bit, it's just a little bit of information, but they've been designed by myself, and they're directly based on all the evidence that I've gathered as a researcher, plus evidence that other researchers have gathered. And they've been developed in conjunction with parents and in conjunction with young people. And they're pulling out the elements where guidance really would help parents and where guidance really will help the students. So let me just take you through I'll do the parent course first up. Okay, so down the side here, you'll see some of the elements of the course for parents. So things like, you know, demystifying the whole idea of parenting digital children. So many parents see that guiding children's home technology use is kind of outside their remit as parents. It's not something that they signed up for when they've thought of being a parent. So a lot of parents are just kind of putting it to the side, and they treat it quite differently to other elements of guiding their children. So that's about helping to put the pieces together, to understand how it all works together. And then for parents to kind of understand the kinds of strategies that they're using right now. And then if we look at some of these, there's a lot about screen time, how addictive screen habits form. So we often think of, you know, teenagers, they're always on their phone, but why are they on their phone? And the main reason for this, and it's something that I've just emerged in my research recently, is that Students often, or young people often, use technology as a way of making them feel better. So if they're at the bus stop and they're feeling a bit lonely or feeling a bit socially awkward, they'll pull out their phone as a way of making them feel better. Or if they're bored, they'll pull out their laptop as a way of making them feel better. So they're not necessarily using technology for any real reason. They're just using the act of using technology as a way of filling in that gap in their life in that day. So the more they use technology for this kind of reason, the more that just absent-mindedly checking their screen becomes a normal part of their day. So right now, the average teenager, when they're at home, checks their screen around every 12 minutes. So helping parents to understand that, rather than just saying, you know, oh, they're just addicted, helping them to understand why that constant phone checking is happening so they can make better decisions around that with their child. Understanding if your child actually has a screen time problem, the problem with focusing just on time on screen. So we have this thing at the moment, we've fallen into this kind of default way of thinking as time as the only way of measuring healthy technology use. But more often it's about what they're doing online, the underlying reasons, what it's leading to, who they're doing it with. There's so many other factors that come into healthy screen use. So helping parents to understand that, because when you have a 15-year-old and you're trying to limit their time on screen, that's not necessarily going to work. So if you know the other elements of healthy screen use, then that helps them to actually have some kind of and then looking at kind of elements that are particularly problematic in the home. So there's a lot of issues around gaming addiction, healthy gaming habits. Family arguments around technology happen every day in around 85% of homes. So the common issues that families are arguing about, how to resolve those. Now, this kind of information, there's all kinds of information online, but you know, I know I'm an expert in this field, and I know a lot of that information online isn't written by an expert or anyone who even knows what they're talking about. So there's a lot of noise for parents to get through, and knowing which is the right information, which is the actual accurate information, is an overwhelming task in itself. So this course puts all the evidence base, the real trustworthy information out there for parents in a very easy way. So the idea of notification-free homework, how do you encourage these kinds of behaviours? You know, misinformation and fake news has just exploded since COVID. Many parents are really unsure about how to detect it or how to show their Year 6 or Year 7 child about that. So it gives tips on helping parents to understand it, helping parents to know what's an educational app. So how do you actually choose an app or choose a good educational site? So the course for parents is something that they would do in their own time. I always think of it a bit like a parent excursion. You know, it's not necessarily something that's going to replace those e-safety talks, but something that would complement them, would help to diffuse the fear and would help to build understanding and build confidence in making decisions around helping their child to guide their digital lifestyle. And then the student course is done a little bit differently. It's there's a number of modules, and each module has a number of core factors, and that's something that you would most likely do with students in a class. So for example, Perth Anglican Girls' School is using this student course at the moment with their Year 7s. So what they're doing is they have their IT skills classes for Year 7s. So they start with elements of the TechClever Students course, and that lasts for about 20 to 25 minutes. And that's how I've structured these. So they start with this digital lifestyle kind of issues, and then they move into their normal skills-based lesson. And what they were telling me just the other day, they said, we're doing it with Year 7s, and we've actually never had these kinds of conversations with any of our students before. You know, we're finding that students are really engaged in the topics. They really want to talk, and they said the best thing for us is that it's opening the lines of communication around technology, which we've never really had. And where, as the students then move forward, we understand them as technology users so much better. So we can understand the kinds of policies and strategies that we need to implement as a staff and as a school. So it looks at things like, viral challenges that are around, the ways influencers work, how they influence us and the kinds of impact they can have on the decisions we make. A lot around fake and real online. This 8-year-old YouTuber who earns $35 million is being taken to court now. So really interesting, newsworthy ways of getting students to think, getting them to think about their own digital practices and what's working and what's not working. And then just opening up lots and lots of discussion around their digital lifestyle. Because at the moment we seem to be quite locked. It's the children and it's the adults. There's not a lot of conversation going on, and this is aimed to help bring that conversation out. So I'm going to leave it there. So if this is something that your school, might work well for your school, you can always follow up with me, and I think Sarah might follow up as well. But it's another way of thinking about how to approach this. John Hattie, I read the other day that he said that it's time to change the ways, those kind of ingrained ways we've had of teaching in schools in Western countries. And my idea is about the same. We've had these ingrained ways of approaching digital education for students and for parents, and the space has changed so much now, particularly with COVID, that changing the ways to align more with the ways our young people are using technology, the needs of parents, and our needs of schools, and focusing on that digital lifestyle is an area that needs to become part of our field of vision in this space. So thanks everyone, I'll leave it there. Have you got any questions or?
I think there was one question, but you did answer it. It was around the age of the students, but I think you did address that.
Yeah, so about the last 2 years of primary school through to all of high school. But I'm finding that the schools that find it quite useful in the high schools are using it with the younger year levels in schools, because they're thinking that's a great way to get their digital habits and digital routines in a really good form as then they travel through high school. And I tend to agree with it. But then there might be year levels at your school that you are just having amazing problems with, and doing something like this might just be the opportunity to start to shift those problem areas around their digital lifestyle.
Just one other question that Madeline has asked, just to summarise the two-pronged approach again.
Yeah, sure. So the two-pronged approach is, because we're talking about students' home use of technology, so it's about the parents and helping them to be more informed, more confident, and feel more empowered in this space so that they can actually make meaningful decisions around their children's technology use. Because, for about 70% of parents, when this issue gets too hard, they tend to drop it. So there's very little guidance coming from them. So that's one end of the prong. And the other one is, because of its technology use, it's quite an intimate act. It has to come from the students also reflecting themselves, because they're the only ones who truly know all the ways that they're using technology, and thinking about the kinds of practices that they've just taken on board, and the ones that are actually causing them stress and why, and the ones that aren't. So as a way of them improving their digital practices. So we're not saying put your phone away, put all the technology away. We're saying when you are using it, think about the ways you're using it, and let's make that better.
Yeah. So just from Solutions IT perspective, we get asked frequently about these type of issues, and it's sort of out of our realm of expertise, hence why we have reached out to Jo. A lot of schools are adopting the BYOD programs, and they're using us for BYOD, for the portals and for purchasing. We've been discussing with Jo being able to, as part of the service that we offer, being able to package up the parent course as part of the BYOD package. But there's also the student course, of course, that if any schools are interested in, they can access that too. And Joe has very kindly let us have access to a sample snippet of each of those courses, which I will be able to get out to everybody who's been on the call today. So you're getting some free takeaways, which is always nice. Just seen another question here. Yep, so removing technology and the negative impact that has on the parent-child relationships. I know that definitely causes grief in my home.
Yeah. And it's the same with younger children. If we give them technology as a reward, that also has negative impacts because it develops a particular kind of attitude to what technology is in their life. You know, I'll give you some more iPad time if you are good. So it develops, if it's constantly used as by a parent as a strategy, it can lead to quite an unhealthy attitude towards technology as well, starting from, you know, primary school.
So thank you very much, Joe. That was really insightful, and I'm absolutely sure that those resources that we are going to share will be of great use to each and every one of the schools that have joined. Yeah, on behalf of Solutions IT, thank you all for your time, and thank you very much for Joe for sharing your insights. We really, really appreciate it.
And thanks everyone.